You don't have to be winner chicken dinner this year. It just doesn't have to be that way. If you do and you put that much pressure on yourself, and I think sometimes we can actually put more pressure on ourselves than what people are actually putting on us. And we got to learn to recognize where we're overdoing it, and putting too much pressure on ourselves. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. It's good to have you along for the ride. I always like to show some love and appreciation for the folks that are hanging with us on all fronts, everything from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook to YouTube. It certainly does, it makes me really happy when I see people that are getting something out of this show. So we keep it going, keep it real, and want to give you some steak and potatoes again today. That's really going to help you in your business management, let's say business development. Before we get started, like and subscribe, all that sort of good stuff, and certainly head across to the Business for Builders VIP private Facebook group. And if you're a good sort, I'll let you in there, and we'll try and keep the value coming. Look, I think today again, we're sort of getting to the position now where my tenure as a project manager may be coming to the final stages. We're just sort of seeing how things are going to work. We're starting another team member in the next sort of week or so. And we're just going to see how that bounces. And either that or I'll lessen my, need on a job site. We've only got 3 or 4 jobs going on. So I'm looking forward to sort of getting back into sort of shooting emails back to everybody that's contacted me. And just on that, hit me up at max@businessforbuilders.ca if you've got a bit of a question. And I really do appreciate the love that I get, from folks that are just paying attention to some of the stuff that I'm saying, and I'm glad it is resonating with our audience. All right, so I think everything that I'm doing on the show is really just based purely out of what I experienced during the week, what I see. I guess I could be accused of being way too critical. I think it's in my nature to really want to do things better and better and better. And I think it's this ongoing desire for more speed, more velocity within the business and all that sort of stuff. And so to that end, I just really want to come up with a really basic topic for today, and that is just better time management. I think what's important is having a routine. There's no question. I believe in having a routine. I think even if very, very rarely do I get out of a Smith & Son shirt purely because it means I've got to think about stuff. I just want to, it's this whole routine, because it's just, we lose so much time worrying about or thinking about or, paying attention to certain things that really don't have what I would call a really good ROI. And so, I guess I am a habit. I have my routine per week is very ingrained, and I like to execute that way because of time efficiency reasons. The only time that I might get changed if I go for a jam with some of the guys or something like that, or I go racing. But even then, Smith & Sons does get a bit of advertising down there, so I think we're rolling in Smith & Sons gear for that as well. So, there's so, like I said, we all have, 40 to 60 hours in our work weeks, depending on how crazy you are. You might do 80. I don't know whether that's sustainable or not, but it's super important that we do manage our time. And a lot of that comes down to our thought process. So I'm going to kind of start, I got 5 points here for, some, and it's certainly by no means an exhaustive list, right? There'll be things that I may have left out or I've not covered. Feel free to do your own research, but this will get the ball rolling, I would say, and maybe shed some light on how you can manage your time during the week better. And it may even expose to you things that perhaps you're not doing as well because what you don't know, and that's an incredibly important sort of item to remember, is that there are things out there that you and I don't know, and it's like, well, how if someone doesn't bring it to my attention, how will I ever actually go about understanding that better? So that's clearly what we want to do. I might get the old, this guy's Captain Obvious. It is what it is. I can't speak to everybody. There's going to be people out there that are probably older and wiser than I, and I'm okay with that. But I'm just here doing my thing, trying to help out. So as it relates to points where you can improve your time management, or where you can apply certain principles for better time management, I've got 5 of them here. The first one is set goals and priorities. Now, you might do that for the day and or the week. I would probably suggest you look at your week and you go, all right, I've got 3 major goals this week. And I think any more than that, I think you're just overdoing it. I tend to sort of sit back on a Sunday afternoon and maybe perhaps just think about my week that is going to be. And I'm like, right, what 3 things do I need to achieve? And I think what we've got to understand is we've got a personal life and a business life. And there's probably other sectors that you could also, some other, divisions, if you like, within your life that you could probably segment to, pay attention to those as well. But predominantly we start with macro, which is personal and business. But, in your business life is what I'm going to refer to. I'm not Dr. Phil. So you might have a couple of projects and you want to hit different payment stages. You might have people in the sales process where you want to get people to contract. And I think a lot of the time what we want to have those 3 goals at the end of the week that we're shooting for, and have them well defined, and then look at reverse engineer. It's like, all right, so what tasks do I need to do each day to ensure that I hit those goals at the end of the week? And what that does is it really does compartmentalize your thinking. And I'm going to talk a little bit more just to sort of on the next point here, where, you want to make sure that you are in control of your time. And I know that the construction industry is very spontaneous and, things don't always go to plan as much as we'd like. But, we've got to focus on how we improve our systemized approach to time management. And so I think we've got to look at what am I doing today to maximize my impact or my effectiveness this week to at least hit 1 or 2 of those goals. And of course you get 1 or 2 of those goals. So you get to the end of the week and you might you'll do a debrief and you say, all right, what did I get done? What did I not get done? And what is still work in progress? And so then you reset. So, I had someone once say to me, it takes, a fairly strong sort of personality to set a goal, but it really takes a bit of courageous personality to actually know that you've missed said goal and then reset the goal again and not feel intimidated by the fact that there is technically a failure, in your mirrors, because you're like, well, I set the goal and I missed it. One of my goals was to recruit, I think, 50 franchisees by 2023. And I haven't hit that goal, but you know what? I'm just going to turn that around and reset it and go again. And there's definitely things when I look back, and this is a classic example, I look back and go, what was my approach? What was my thinking? What was my activity level like? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then when I reset the goal, I'm going to use that experience. And this is why, when you've got street smarts, not just book smarts, it really does help you, because learning on the fly, it impacts you a lot, because it affects me when there's things that I look at in my experience over the last 3 years and I go, there was some failure there that I really did not enjoy, that really did cost me some money. And I'm you can get to a point where you can just wallow in your failure, or you can embrace that failure and you can fail forward. I think a lot of the time we don't understand the power or the importance that the failure that you've experienced in your life has as the prerequisite to your successes going forward. And I'm not sure who said this, and I'm not going to quote it, but someone, I think it was a football coach, said, a setback is a setup for a comeback. And so, when I'm looking at what I've failed in the last 2 or 3 years, I know that that's just a setup for a comeback. And nothing's better than an underdog story that comes back and finishes on top. So, I think we need to break down, a day into tasks. What are we going to achieve today that's going to help us reach our goals at the end of the week? And so really what we're doing is we're not just setting goals, but we are we're looking at the priorities. And so a term that's used in the medical world is triage. And all triage means is to determine the level of urgency. So, nurses will triage patients as they come in to determine where they end up. Are they at a high level of urgency, or are they a low or a moderate level? And I think we need to ensure that we're not paying a lot of attention to something that is, we feel like we're doing the right thing, but we actually should push that down the list a little bit and do something else that's more important. So setting clear goals and ensuring that we are prioritizing correctly. And I think when you're talking about the business, I mean, we're talking about creating a profitable business. That's really where it's going. Profitable business, and one that gives you lifestyle, the ability. So, leverage gives you lifestyle. So systems and tools give you lifestyle. Human resources should give you leverage and lifestyle. We want to look at what is going to take us to that end result. Now, you might be a one-man band right now on the tools doing everything, but it's not your end result. So business is an infinite game, which means you're going to be basically, as long as you have got breath in your lungs and you still enjoy the industry and being your own boss and being a business owner, you're going to continue to do this. So you may have had a really rotten year in 2022. We're in April 2023 right now. And, so going forward, you might think, okay, so I'm going to gather myself up and I'm going to do things a little bit better. And, that's super important. So it'll help you focus your time and energy on what really matters. That's what setting clear goals and priorities does. Point number 2, calendar blocking. Now, this is something that I learned about over a decade ago. Trying to, any of those meetings or commitments or appointments that are an absolute, and I like to do this in a year in advance, specifically where I've got major events, things that I'm a part of that are mapped out for the whole year. I will go and block my calendar out, and it's like, then if I get something that comes along and it says, well, you've got this engagement, or this invitation, I just flip my calendar open all the time, whether I'm standing in a band practice with my rock and roll buddies and we're trying to book the next jam session, immediately my phone comes out and I go straight to my calendar. It is my absolute go-to for time management, and I make sure that in advance I want to block out things, that are important to me, both personally and professionally, and to make sure that I don't go and double book myself. So, I think what we need to do is pay attention to the things that are emergencies that actually pull you away from the things that are actually urgent. And, I know that when there is an emergency on, then you've really got to attend to that, but it can be to the detriment of something that actually is important that you should be doing. And we talk about this a lot here in the office, and, there's some times where we've got to go and undertake something that's an emergency, but, and it might be just something that's minor on site, which is just an annoyance really. But if we don't do that, then the next trade can't come in. So it's a bit of an emergency, but what's more important is to possibly handle, certain things that are happening in the sales process, and certain things that, like emails that need to be sent, and where you're asking a client for commitment. Those things are actually important because that down the track you need to keep your workflow full so that you've got cash flow and things like that. And yet we get drawn away from our office or that situation, or when we're in that mindset where I've got to take care of the important things because we're now dealing with an emergency. And I think it probably what the goal for most of us is, and I think it's maybe a little esoteric, or it maybe is a little bit of a wishful thinking, but what we really want is calmness and predictability in our work life and personal life as much as we can. And I think that is achieved through systemization and organization. And so, like I said, going back to the start, we're always fairly critical about what we're doing because we know that when we drop the ball, instantly there's a debrief that's got to happen. It's like, what caused that? Why did it happen? Who was responsible? How can we do that better? How can we systemize? And we make those improvements so we avoid that, catastrophe going around again? Calmness and predictability. I kind of like it, and I know everyone would probably agree with this. It's like when I haven't got the proverbial shit hitting the fan on a job site, but there's production and there's progress being made. That's what you're going for, because we all want a business that provides cash flow and profit and lifestyle. And when you've got all kinds of, craziness happening on building sites, my head pivoted. I'm like, when you've got the right humans, life is good. When you've got the wrong humans, life is not cool. And dealing with the wrong humans it just sucks the life and the energy out of you. And I know that I've there's times when I've got recruitment right, and there's times where I've got recruitment incredibly wrong. And so, but I know when you get it wrong, it sucks the life out of you. But when you got it right, it works really well for you. So I think we all want calmness and predictability in our life, both professionally and personal. But we also then we've got to start looking at, okay, if I don't have calmness and predictability, in other words, I've got craziness and I've got uncertainty, then it's like, how can I turn this ship around? What is it that I can do? Now, we had a situation with a cabinet maker where I think I might have talked about this in the last show, where it's like, right, we've got this, a little bit of a miscommunication. How are we going to go about doing that better? Well, we're going to have the interior designer and the client and the cabinet maker and the builder all sitting around the table before we go to contract, or at least agree on the design side of things, and making sure we're all understanding of what's important to the client, and then all of our understanding of what the client wants is documented and taken care of, so that we don't get under construction, which is what happened last week. Or was it this week, end of last week, and all of a sudden we've got a little bit of finger pointing. I didn't know about that. Am I expected to pay for that? That's not my fault. All that kind of business, which we don't want to fight with people. We just want to work with people. We want to make our clients happy. We don't want anybody else to lose money. We want to, walk this walk together. And fortunately, because we've got great cabinet makers working for us, they certainly did. They were cooperative, from where we were sitting, and we all agreed that it's got to be handled better and differently going forward. So, that's a little bit of a deviation away from calendar blocking, but what we're trying to do is create calmness and certainty in our life, both personally and professionally. And, things like, I've got to meet with my accountant once a month because I've got to spend an hour and a half looking at the profit and loss. I've got to have a construction meeting every Wednesday afternoon at 3:30 with my project manager. And what we want to look at is, progress payment draws. We want to look at what we're going to achieve for the month as far as, income, and what is happening on a building site that needs correction, and what is happening on a building site that's working well. So we're always doing this assessment process. That's super important. So those kinds of things is where you go, all right, this is very much a recurring meeting that is important. We're not talking about, dealing with emergencies. It's not a crisis room. What we're talking about is being very proactive, not a wasted motion, and being very organized in our approach to developing a better business. That's what we are. As business owners, we are our own business development manager, and we've got to be very proactive and very honest with ourselves as it relates to our time management, and calendar blocking is definitely one of those things. Point number 3, avoid multitasking. Look, from a project manager standpoint and from a carpenter standpoint, I can speak to both. It's like, dude, if I'm, when I'd go in and do carpentry finishing, I would go in and I would just cut everything. I would cut trim, I would cut door jambs, I would make sure everything was prepped, ready to go before I even got a compressor and a nail gun out. And then what I would do is I would start swinging doors, and I would not start baseboard until I had completed, swinging doors and putting the trim on. And then I might do the window trim, and then I might do baseboard. So what you need to do is think about going back to point number 1, looking at your priorities and your goals and what tasks you're going to need to do, and really rounding up the sheep. If the sheep are your tasks, you need to make sure that there's not sheep getting through your line as you push forward. You've got to make sure. We can kind of think, we've got this happening and this. And I find it like whenever I've got my CEO hat and I'm sitting at the desk, I've got half a dozen emails that need to be sent all at the same time. And then I've got people walking in chatting to me about different things. And I've got a PM, interim PM hat on. And so there is a lot of things that can pull me in different directions. And I literally physically and consciously have to put them on a to-do list or a doing list, and then basically just knock them off one at a time. Because if I need to get that list out of my head first and foremost, I don't care how you do that. I don't care if you use a to-do list on your on your phone, or whether you're like me. I kind of like to do a little bit of both. If I'm sitting at my desk, I think of something, because this is what happens. I'm working, and then I'll go, bang. I've got to get that thought out of my head, and I immediately write it down, and then I keep typing an email or whatever the case is. And that's about managing my effectiveness throughout the day to ensure that I just have this absolute cluster of items where there's loose ends and nothing ever gets done. And that's the frustrating part, because I think Tony Robbins says that progress gives happiness. So when we're achieving things at the end of the day, and I think this is where tradesmen specifically really enjoy doing what they do, because they can look over their shoulder and they can see that frame and trusses put up, and they can drive past that home for a long time and know that they built that. And there's something really satisfying about that. So, if you're in an office environment, then I think you take the same approach. It's like, okay, we start with the slab, or we start with the basement, and we do the floor, structure, and then we do the frame, main floor frame, and then the upstairs frame, and then the trusses and everything. Like that build process is really what we hinge our identity on in some cases, that we're very organised carpenters or builders or whatnot. And I think what we need to do is be very organised business development managers as well. So focus on one task at a time is what I would advise you to do, and make sure that you're operating more efficiently. And then you kind of reduce the chance or the risk of mistakes and oversights and errors, because you are very organised in your approach to getting things on that task list done. All right, point number 4, you got to take breaks. And I think that the biggest killer of business momentum or business development is fatigue. And I know sometimes, I'm in an office here, and not today because the weather's turned to shit, but I know that I really enjoy, and being from a tradie background, I fed my family for a quarter of a century swinging a hammer and trying to develop a trade business. And being outside, it does something to me. Like sometimes I'm even more comfortable making phone calls sitting in my truck. It's kind of bizarre than sitting in an office, but definitely walking around is something that I like to do. So what that can do for me, sometimes just going outside and just taking that break, I think it's super important, because you need to recharge. I remember being on the tools once, and I'd work, and then I would start to make cock-ups, and you'd not just one or two, but you'd be just making these oversights, and I would literally hear myself say to myself, time out, have something to eat. And it's just like, you just throw the bag down and you're like, I just need time out. That's what we're talking about, because you're not a robot. You are a human. There is an emotional and a physical and mentally, like you just need to take some of that stress off. And what stress is just the load on your shoulders. And sometimes you just need to pick that up, put it down, and get, go and do something else. And, I love motorsport, and I love playing rock and roll. And so for me, they're the kinds of things, there might be a day in my work week where I won't go outside, but what I will do is I might just change browsers, and I'll go and, look at prepping for our rehearsal that we've got coming up tomorrow night, because it really, that to me is not a stress. But what I do is I just forget about work for a second. So I think taking a break in your day, if you're scheduling breaks, it's super important. I know that we do it. We do it more and more now, especially when I've been working with this builder. The odd occasion we might drive past our favorite watering hole, and we're like, we're going to go and have some appies and maybe a beer or two. And I think there's a lot of power in that, especially if you're with someone, like we are. We're rolling around jobs together a lot. But there's a thing called iron sharpens iron. So you're really sharpening your approach. It's funny, you take a break and you're actually rebuilding yourself, which is counterintuitive, because you think, I need to be doing stuff all the time. The problem with that is, because you're not a machine or a robot, that is not sustainable. So what we're saying is, if you want to be a highly effective, impactful business leader, business development manager, then recharging your own batteries is very important. I've got a bunch of Milwaukee tools that I like to use. You'll have your own set of tools, but even Milwaukee with their 9 amp hour battery, it still goes flat and it still needs to recharge. And so you might be a super tool. You might be a bit of a legend, but even you will at some point need to recharge your battery. So a little bit along the way during the day is going to go a long ways to really helping you maintain a high level of effectiveness and, being that business operator and having a business that's profitable that we all want. The final thing here, point number 5, learn to say no. I think, I took on the role as president of our local kart racing club, and it was just pretty obvious that I wasn't a fit, for that position. And so I basically resigned because I love to do motorsport. I was trying to help, but it wasn't, being viewed that way. And I was aggressive from a corporate standpoint. I wanted to see the club grow, and that just wasn't being embraced. And so I thought, well, I've got way too much on my plate. So I relinquished, my position there and resigned. I think I've seen guys really damage their own lives and businesses because they just wanted to make everybody happy and could not. and they just reach the end of their, tether and really, realize that it's not sustainable, guys and girls. You have to at some point realize when you're maxed out, and anything beyond that is going to destroy you. So you need to be able to say no. You need to prioritize your own needs and goals. Personally, we don't work, I love business, but I don't live to work. I work so I can go play. And of course, I subscribe totally to doing work first. I tell my kids, work first, play second. But it's not like work first and work second and work third until you don't want to be a slave to your business. That's just craziness. The other thing that helps me too is when I'm talking to my guys, and something that I use as well, is I just have to put people on a waiting list. I mean, sometimes, to get into a restaurant, you've got to go and sit at the bar because there's no tables available. It's just the way it is. You've got limited resources as far as what stress you can, carry around and what you can bear. And you just need to know when you've hit your maximum, or when you're about to hit your top end, where you go, no more, I haven't got any space for any more. My brain is fried. You've got to learn to say no. I think that's the best thing, because what happens is the stress of maybe letting people down now takes away from your effectiveness as a business development manager. And, that really is not going to help you in your end result. So remember, you don't have to kick goals all this. Like, you don't have to be winner, chicken dinner this year. It just doesn't have to be that way. If you do, and you put that much pressure on yourself, and I think sometimes we can actually put more pressure on ourselves than what people are actually putting on us. And we got to learn to recognize where we're overdoing it, and putting too much pressure on ourselves. And learning to say no, or waiting list is super important. So set clear goals and priorities. That was point number 1. Calendar blocking. That was point number 2. Avoid multitasking. That was point number 3. Taking breaks is point number 4. And learn to say no, and or put people on a waiting list is your 5th point for better time management. Email me, max@businessforbuilders.ca. If you've got any questions, head across to the Business for Builders VIP private Facebook group. If you're a good sort, I'll let you in. And be sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate the love and the feedback. It makes it all worthwhile. And like Gary V says, it is my oxygen. And so, we're looking forward to putting some more good stuff together. So go build a kick-ass business. See you on the next episode. Cheers.